Hello and welcome to the Fragrant Divide. In this video, I wanted to share some of my non-green picks for spring 2023. First on my list is one of the most quintessential spring perfumes in my collection. It's Grace by Comme de Garcons. This is actually a collaboration with Grace Coddington, the very popular, now former creative director of American Vogue. So Grace is a very feminine green herbal rose with hints of mint and basil and a slight fruity undertone. And I know I'm a guy, but I do love this for spring. I do have a very specific reason of why I love this. First, it's a green rose, and I'm a sucker for green scents. I know I said that this list is about non-green scents, but I included this one because it's dominated by a floral, fruity feeling instead of actually being green. So it's harder to categorize it as a green perfume than anything else. The second one is that for some reason, even though there's no really direct connection, this scent reminds me of the women in my life. Like it sort of reminds me of my mom, my aunt, my cousin, my sister, all of those women who I care for, but not in a romantic way. I don't know why. I mean, my mom doesn't, this doesn't remind me of my mom or anything like that. I can't remember what type of perfume she actually wears, but for some reason, it gives me that feeling, which makes this a perfect Mother's Day scent. I don't mind wearing it just because of, that association, but it is very feminine. It is very floral and a little bit perfumey. I'm not very familiar with scents that are specifically marketed for women, but definitely check this one out. Next on my list is Squid by Zoologist. This is a bit of a surprise for me because I didn't know what to expect. Of course, it's obviously something with ink, right? So I really didn't know what to expect. So when I tested this purely out of curiosity, and I ended up really, really liking it. So what does it smell like? So the three main things about this one is saltiness, inkiness, and some sweetness. So the combination of those three just makes this one like just so delicious. It's hard to categorize this as a gourmand per se, but yeah, the combination of those notes almost give off like a vanilla-like, slightly marzipan-ish kind of smell. Like everything about this one is still dominated by kind of like a relatively sheer ink note. But don't be put off by that. It's really, really quite delicious smelling. And the this is not a big projecting scent, so it's still perfect for spring where it's still a little cold and not too hot. Some people think that the sweetness is overwhelming, but as someone who's very sensitive to sweetness, I don't think it's overwhelming at all. That ink still dominates the whole thing, and maybe when the saltiness kind of falls off, it becomes kind of like almost linearly inky and sweet at the same time. Another thing about squid is that it's very, very smooth all throughout. So it's super smooth until it finally disappears off of your clothes or your skin, which is a major plus for me. Next on my list is Suede Pony by Boy Smells. So I've only had this for about a year, but it has quickly become one of my favorite dumb reaches. So Suede Pony smells very fruity and kind of flamboyant, and you can definitely detect a little bit of the nuttiness from the hazelnut in there, and the saffron in here is very, very floral. But the combination of all of those notes kind of create this almost like cough syrupy thing, but I mean that in a really good way. Like it's kind of like a children's cough syrup. It's just a joy to smell in the air because it's very fruity and it's sort of medicinal smelling. And unfortunately, the suede in here stays closer to the skin, but the thing that you smell in the air is the fruitiness and kind of that floral floral saffron and violet. But it's just an easy wear, perfect for spring. Next is Chanel Allure Homme, the original. So if you happen to watch my summer list from last year, I listed the cologne version. So in spring, I'm wearing the original one. Allure Homme is a citrus woody amber with some spice basically, but the citruses in here are very full-bodied, unlike the cologne one where the citrus is elegant and sheer. Here it's full-bodied, so it's more appropriate for spring or fall, but probably too heavy for the summer, especially here in Vegas where the summers are really, really hot. What I really like about this one is that yes, it's a woody amber, but at the same time, it has that Chanel old world vibe. It's totally right up my alley. I don't know why, but recently I've just been really digging these kind of like old world, old school type of scents, and you know, some scents that are probably considered as grandma-ish. But yeah, I'm loving that. The final one on my list is Ambergris from Perris, Monte Carlo. So this one is a bit of an oddball. It's fairly new to my collection. This one is actually quite weird, to be honest. It's kind of bitter, kind of soapy. It almost has kind of like a bleach undertone to it. But the overall smell of it is just kind of intoxicating. It's sort of like uh, a very literal translation of a gray amber. It's almost like several shades of gray layered together, and no, not 50 shades, not 50 shades of gray, but it's just a few shades of gray. Some are sheer, some are thick, some are darker, but it's kind of that airy, kind of like damp woods type, but it's still dry, you know, in an ambery kind of way. And even though it says ambergris, there's no saltiness to it, which is usually comes with ambergris recreations. So this one, it's really, really very gray. And then at the base, the other thing that makes this interesting is that at the base, there's a very, very faint touch of sweetness. So as it goes on, you get that gray thing going on, and then like a tiny hint of that tonka, and maybe ambrette musk. Also, the thing that probably gives this its overall gray feeling is probably the labdanum. I just find this one so interesting, and I just kept sniffing my wrist when I put this on my skin, so I ended up getting it and no regrets at all. I do have an honorable mention, and it's Eau Fresh by Gallagher Fragrances. This is an honorable mention because it's technically discontinued, or as Gallagher Fragrances put it, it's called vaulted. And from my understanding, vaulted means it's technically discontinued, but sometimes they get they do a limited run of it. But then once that supply runs out, then it's gone. And then maybe they might bring it back again, but we don't know. I really like this one because it's a very fresh take on tobacco. And tobacco is usually hard to wear in the summer, but in spring, this one is just perfect. It's, you know how scents usually combine tobacco with either cherry or combine it with honey. Here, it is combined with like a combination of ripe red and green grapes, so that type of sweet and sour combination, for some reason it works really, really well. So it overall comes off as a very fresh citrusy tobacco, and the tobacco in here smells fresh and leafy, and it's just a very enjoyable wear. Some people can't take this for some reason, but maybe the oddness of it is what I really like about it. But it's definitely unlike a lot of other scents that you've smelled. But you know, the tobacco is very recognizable, but that combination with the grapes, it's just so good. Here are my non-green scents that I'll be enjoying this spring. Please let me know down in the comments what your favorite picks are. Thank you for watching.